You still have time to stop, officer. Marcus Reed spoke with such calm certainty that every sound inside Liberty Diner seemed to fade around him. The old country song above the kitchen became a distant murmur. The rain against the windows softened to a whisper. Even the coffee machine behind the counter appeared to fall silent. Marcus stood beside the chrome counter with his hands secured behind him, his dark canvas jacket damp from the storm, while Officer Daniel Whitmore remained close enough to make his authority unmistakable. A white coffee cup slipped from Helen Brooks's trembling hand and struck the tiled floor, spilling a dark trail beneath the red neon light. No one reached for it. No one moved. Whitmore glanced at the customers watching from their booths, then returned his attention to the black man in handcuffs. "You should have left when I gave you the chance," he said. His voice carried the confidence of someone who believed a badge could turn suspicion into fact and silence into consent. Marcus looked toward the round clock above the kitchen door. The second hand moved steadily toward 8:47 in the evening. He had been waiting for that exact minute. Whitmore followed his gaze and smiled without warmth. Expecting someone? Marcus looked toward the security camera above the pie display. Its small indicator light appeared dark, but appearances had stopped meaning anything inside that room. "I am expecting the truth to arrive," Marcus replied. Helen stood frozen behind the register, one hand pressed against the open drawer. Emily Carter remained near the coffee station, gripping an empty pot as though it were the only steady thing left in the diner. Officer Tyler Grant watched from beside the entrance, his expression caught between duty and doubt. An older couple sat before two unfinished slices of pie. A truck driver held his phone near his chest, uncertain whether recording would protect the truth or invite more trouble. Imagine standing in a room full of witnesses and realizing fear has taught every one of them how to disappear. Marcus understood that silence. It was not agreement. It was survival. Whitmore turned toward the room and raised his voice. This man refused a lawful order, disturbed paying customers, and was found with illegal material. He is leaving in custody. Marcus did not argue. His breathing remained slow. His shoulders stayed relaxed. "For the record," he said, "state your full name and badge number." Whitmore laughed. "You think you are in control here?" Marcus looked at the clock again. 10 seconds remained. Beyond the rain-streaked windows, headlights appeared at both entrances to the parking lot. Dark vehicles rolled beneath the flickering diner sign without sirens. Whitmore had not noticed them yet. "No," Marcus answered. "I think the evidence is." The second hand reached 8:47. Somewhere beyond those walls, every recorded word, hidden payment, false accusation, and camera image reached the Internal Affairs Command Center. Marcus met Whitmore's eyes. "This is your last chance to tell the truth." Whitmore tightened his jaw and turned toward the front door. Outside, several engines went quiet at once. Car doors opened in the rain. The bell above the diner entrance began to ring. 30 minutes earlier, Marcus Reed had entered Liberty Diner beneath a sky the color of wet steel. The rain had not started yet, but the air carried the heavy stillness that often came before a summer storm in Virginia. He paused just inside the door and allowed his eyes to adjust to the warm amber light. Red vinyl booths lined the windows. Chrome stools faced the counter. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with grilled onions and warm apple pie. An old country song played softly from a radio near the kitchen, nearly hidden beneath the clatter of dishes and quiet conversation. Marcus wore faded work pants, a plain gray shirt, and a dark canvas jacket that made him look like a delivery driver finishing a long shift. That was exactly what he wanted people to see. He chose the last booth along the west wall, a seat with a clear view of the front entrance, the register, the kitchen hallway, and the narrow door leading toward the alley. From there, he could also see part of the parking lot reflected in the large mirror behind the counter. Emily Carter approached with a menu tucked beneath one arm. Her smile was polite, but her eyes moved quickly toward the front windows before returning to him. "Coffee?" she asked. "Black, please," Marcus answered. His voice was friendly and unremarkable. Emily filled the mug, placed it beside the menu, and moved away without another word. Marcus reached into his pocket and set a worn silver coin beside the cup. To anyone watching, it looked like loose change for a tip. To the surveillance team waiting in an unmarked vehicle less than half a mile away, it meant he was in position and the operation had begun. Marcus did not stare. Staring made people cautious. Instead, He watched through reflections, pauses, and changes in posture. Helen Brooks stood behind the register, sorting receipts with the careful movements of someone trying to appear busy. Every few minutes, she opened the same lower drawer, checked something inside, then closed it again. The camera above the pie display showed no active light, while a second camera near the kitchen appeared to be working. A man eating at the counter spoke loudly about baseball until a patrol car passed on the highway. Then his voice disappeared. Two customers near the window stopped laughing at the same moment. Emily nearly dropped a spoon. Marcus lifted his coffee and took a slow sip. Fear had a rhythm, and everyone inside Liberty Diner seemed to know the same song. Helen finally brought him a plate he had not ordered. A slice of apple pie rested in the center, steam rising from the crust. Beneath the plate was a folded receipt. Marcus waited until she walked away before turning it over. For words had been written in blue ink. "Leave before he gets here." Marcus read the warning once, then placed the receipt beneath his coffee mug. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the highway. He looked at the clock above the kitchen door. It was 8:17 in the evening. Then headlights swept across the diner windows, and every conversation in the room stopped. The headlights belonged to a black and white patrol car that turned slowly into the parking lot and stopped beneath the flickering Liberty Diner sign. No siren sounded. No emergency lights flashed. Yet the effect inside was immediate. Helen closed the lower register drawer so quickly that several receipts slipped onto the floor. Emily turned toward the coffee station and reached for a towel she did not need. The man at the counter lowered his eyes to his plate. Marcus remained still, one hand around the warm mug, watching the reflection in the mirror behind the counter. Officer Daniel Whitmore stepped out from behind the wheel with the relaxed confidence of someone entering a place he believed belonged to him. He was broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, and dressed in a uniform pressed so sharply that every line seemed deliberate. A younger officer climbed out from the passenger side. Tyler Grant looked no older than 30. His posture was careful, his expression guarded, and his eyes scanned the diner before Whitmore reached the door. The bell above the entrance rang. Helen forced a smile. "Good evening, officers." Whitmore removed his hat, placed it on the counter, and looked across the room as though taking attendance. "Quiet tonight," he said. No one answered. He smiled anyway. Emily poured 2 cups of coffee before either officer asked. Tyler thanked her. Whitmore did not. He slid onto a stool near the register and tapped 2 fingers against the counter. Helen opened the same lower drawer Marcus had been watching. She removed a plain white envelope and placed it beneath a folded newspaper. Whitmore covered it with one hand and drew it toward himself without looking down. The exchange lasted less than 3 seconds. It was practiced, routine, invisible only to people who had decided not to see it. Marcus lifted his coffee as though taking another sip, but his eyes followed the envelope until it disappeared inside Whitmore's jacket. Tyler noticed. His shoulders tightened, and for one brief moment, he looked directly at Helen. She looked away first. Whitmore accepted a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes without ordering. Then his gaze settled on Marcus. It did not move. "Who is that?" he asked. Helen hesitated. "A customer." Whitmore gave a quiet laugh. "I can see that." He turned on the stool. "I asked who he is." Marcus set down his mug. "Marcus Reed." Whitmore rose and crossed the diner at an unhurried pace. "You from around here, Marcus?" "Passing through." "Doing what?" "Having coffee." A few customers shifted in their seats. Whitmore stopped beside the booth and looked at the silver coin near Marcus's cup. "Who do you work for?" "A delivery company." "Which one?" Marcus met his eyes. "Is there a reason you are asking?" The room seemed to shrink around the question. Whitmore placed one hand on the back of the booth. "People around here answer when an officer speaks to them." Marcus looked toward Tyler, who stood near the entrance with his jaw set. Then Marcus returned his attention to Whitmore. "People everywhere have the right to know why they are being questioned." Whitmore's smile faded. Outside, the first drops of rain began tapping against the windows. Inside, Helen held her breath. Whitmore leaned closer and said, "Maybe you should finish your coffee somewhere else." Marcus glanced at the untouched slice of apple pie, then returned his attention to Whitmore. "I paid for my coffee. I am sitting quietly. I have not disturbed anyone." His tone remained even, but the words changed the air inside the diner. Whitmore was accustomed to apologies, lowered eyes, and quick obedience. Calm resistance unsettled him more than anger ever could. I am telling you to leave, he said. That should be enough. Marcus rested both hands on the table where everyone could see them. Are you speaking as a customer, or are you giving me a lawful order? Tyler shifted near the entrance. Helen lowered her eyes. Emily stopped wiping the same clean section of counter. Whitmore looked around and realized the entire room was listening. His authority had been challenged, not with shouting, but with a simple question he could not answer honestly. The owner wants you gone, he said. Marcus turned toward Helen. Is that true, Miss Brooks? Helen opened her mouth, but Whitmore answered for her. Do not involve her. Marcus heard the warning beneath those words. Helen heard it too. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the register. I have not asked him to leave, she said softly. Whitmore slowly turned toward her. The silence that followed felt colder than the rain beginning to strike the windows. Helen, he said, you should think carefully. She looked down again. That was all Marcus needed to understand. This was not a misunderstanding. It was control, repeated so often that everyone had learned a role. Whitmore faced Marcus once more. Get up. Marcus slid the silver coin beneath the edge of his saucer, a small movement that signaled the surveillance team to remain alert. What law have I broken? He asked. Whitmore drew a slow breath. You are making customers uncomfortable. Which customers? No one raised a hand. No one spoke. An elderly man near the window stared into his coffee. A truck driver at the counter studied the rain. Fear had turned ordinary people into furniture. Whitmore pointed toward the door. Out. Marcus remained seated. Am I being detained, or are you asking me to leave because I am black? The sentence landed gently, but no one could pretend not to hear it. Tyler looked at Whitmore, waiting for him to step back. Instead, Whitmore moved closer to the booth and positioned himself between Marcus and the counter. One hand disappeared briefly beside his jacket. Marcus did not stare. He watched the curved reflection in the chrome napkin holder. Whitmore lowered his hand near the far side of the booth, then straightened. The movement was smooth, practiced, and nearly hidden from everyone except Marcus and the camera near the kitchen. Stand up, Whitmore ordered. Marcus rose slowly, keeping his hands visible. Whitmore bent toward the booth and reached beneath the table. When he stood again, a small sealed packet rested between his fingers. Satisfaction returned to his face. Well, he said, holding it where the room could see. Look what we found. Emily covered her mouth. Helen whispered, no. Tyler stared at the packet, then at Whitmore, and something in his expression began to change. Marcus looked calmly at the supposed evidence. Is this how you usually make your arrests? For the first time that evening, Whitmore hesitated. Whitmore recovered quickly, but the brief hesitation had already changed the room. Tyler had seen it. Emily had seen it. Helen had seen it. Even the customers who had trained themselves not to notice anything were now watching closely. Whitmore held the sealed packet between two fingers and forced a thin smile. You want to explain this? Marcus looked at the packet, then at the curved surface of the chrome napkin holder. The reflection still showed the angle from which Whitmore had approached the booth. I think you should explain it, Marcus said. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Be careful. I am being careful. Marcus turned slightly, enough to include the room without raising his voice. Very careful. Rain swept harder across the windows, blurring the patrol car beneath the red diner sign. The old radio continued playing, but no one seemed to hear it anymore. Whitmore placed the packet on the table as though presenting final proof. Suspected possession of a controlled substance. Refusal to obey a lawful order. Disorderly conduct. Tyler stepped forward. Daniel, we should slow down. Whitmore looked at him sharply. Officer Grant, secure the front door. Tyler did not move. I did not see that packet when we came in. The words were quiet, but they carried farther than he intended. Whitmore turned fully toward him. Are you questioning my judgment? Tyler glanced at Marcus, then at the packet. I am saying we need to preserve the scene correctly. Helen closed her eyes for a moment, as though hearing someone speak the first honest sentence in years. Whitmore pointed toward the entrance. Do your job. Tyler remained where he was. Marcus studied the younger officer. Fear was still there, but something else had begun to rise beside it. Shame. Sometimes courage did not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it entered as a man refusing to take one more step in the wrong direction. Whitmore faced Marcus again. Identification. Marcus moved one hand slowly toward his jacket pocket. Stop, Whitmore said. Keep your hands where I can see them. Marcus returned both hands to the edge of the table. You asked for identification. I decide when you move. Marcus nodded once. Then decide. The calmness in his voice irritated Whitmore more than open defiance would have. Whitmore leaned closer. You think because you speak politely, people will believe you over me. Marcus looked around the diner. This is not about who they believe. His eyes moved toward the camera above the pie display. It is about what can be proven. Emily followed his gaze. Her breathing changed. Then she set down the coffee pot and reached beneath the counter. Whitmore noticed. What are you doing? Emily froze. Helen stepped between her and the register. She is checking the camera system. Nobody touches anything. Whitmore's voice rose, and the last trace of friendly authority disappeared. Marcus watched Helen's hand rest against the lower drawer, the same one that had held the white envelope. He watched Emily glance toward a small switch beneath the counter. He watched Tyler look at the camera and finally understand why Marcus was not afraid. Whitmore picked up the packet and said, "You are coming with me." Marcus looked at the clock. It was 8:29 in the evening. 18 minutes remained before the internal affairs team was scheduled to enter. He had expected to spend that time collecting evidence quietly. Instead, Whitmore was building the case himself, one word at a time. Marcus met his eyes and said, "Then make sure every step is on the record." Whitmore reached for the handcuffs on his belt, and the quiet metallic sound drew every eye in the diner. Marcus did not move. He stood beside the booth with his hands visible, his shoulders relaxed, and his attention fixed on the officer in front of him. "Turn around," Whitmore ordered. Marcus looked toward Tyler. "Is your body camera recording?" Tyler hesitated. "Yes." Whitmore gave him a warning glance. "That was not your question to answer." Marcus turned slowly, offering no resistance. The handcuffs closed around his wrists with a clear click that seemed louder than the rain, louder than the old radio, and louder than the refrigerator humming behind the counter. Emily stared at the floor. Helen pressed one hand against the register, her face tight with fear and regret. Whitmore guided Marcus toward the counter and spoke loudly enough for every customer to hear. "This is what happens when someone enters a respectable business, refuses lawful instructions, and brings what appears to be a controlled substance inside." Marcus remained calm. "You have not tested that packet. I do not need advice from you. You also did not photograph where you claim it was found." Tyler looked toward the booth. The packet had already been moved more than once. No evidence marker had been placed. No clear chain of custody had been established. Every step Whitmore ignored seemed to make the younger officer more uneasy. "Daniel," Tyler said, "we need a supervisor here." Whitmore turned. "I am the senior officer on scene. That does not replace procedure." The words hung between them. Whitmore lowered his voice. "You have been on this job for 3 years. Do not damage your career over a stranger." Marcus heard every word. So did the recorder hidden inside the seam of his jacket. Whitmore returned to the center of the diner and pointed toward Marcus as though presenting him to a jury. People like him come through towns like this and expect everyone else to ignore what is right in front of them. Marcus lifted his chin slightly. "What exactly is in front of you?" Whitmore gave a cold smile. "A man who does not belong here." No one moved. The sentence crossed the room more sharply than a shout. Helen looked up. Emily's expression changed from fear to anger. Tyler stared at Whitmore as though seeing him clearly for the first time. Imagine hearing a uniformed officer decide that your skin, your presence, and your quiet refusal to surrender your dignity are enough to make you suspicious. Marcus had heard versions of those words before. Tonight, however, they were not disappearing into an empty hallway or an unwritten report. They were being preserved. Whitmore pulled a notebook from his pocket. "Full name." Marcus read. "Address." "You asked for identification and then stopped me from reaching for it." A few customers exchanged glances. Whitmore's pen paused. "Do you think this is a joke?" "No," Marcus said. "I think every detail matters." Emily slowly reached beneath the counter. Her fingers found the hidden switch. A small green light appeared on the camera above the pie display, and the backup feed began uploading automatically to cloud storage. Tyler noticed it. Marcus noticed it. Whitmore did not. The clock above the kitchen door read 8:34 in the evening. 13 minutes remained before the internal affairs team was scheduled to enter. Marcus kept his breathing slow and his voice steady. "State the charge clearly." Whitmore looked up. "Suspected possession of a controlled substance, disorderly conduct, and refusal to obey a lawful order. Marcus nodded once. And who witnessed you find the packet? The diner fell silent again. Whitmore looked around, expecting support. None came. Tyler drew a slow breath. I did not see that packet until Officer Whitmore held it up. Helen raised her eyes. Emily stood straighter. Whitmore turned sharply toward his partner. Be very careful what you say next. Tyler met his gaze. That is exactly what I am doing. Whitmore stared at Tyler as though the younger officer had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. For several seconds, no one moved. The rain pressed harder against the windows, and the small green light above the pie display continued to glow. Marcus stood beside the counter with his hands secured behind him, listening as fear began to lose its grip on the room. You are making a serious mistake, Whitmore said. Tyler answered without looking away. I think staying silent would be the mistake. Helen stepped away from the register. Her hands were still trembling, but her voice was clear. He did not disturb anyone. He ordered coffee, paid for it, and sat quietly. Whitmore turned toward her. You should think carefully before making a statement. Helen looked at the lower drawer where the white envelope had been kept. I have been thinking carefully for 2 years. Emily moved beside her. The camera is recording, and the backup feed is already being stored online. Whitmore's expression tightened. Turn it off. I cannot erase what has already been uploaded, Emily said. The truck driver at the counter slowly raised his phone. I recorded part of it too. An older man near the window cleared his throat. I saw the officer move his hand near the booth before he claimed to find the packet. His wife nodded. So did I. Whitmore looked around the diner, and for the first time he seemed to understand that the room no longer belonged to him. The people he had counted on to remain quiet were becoming witnesses. Marcus spoke calmly. State again where you found the packet. Whitmore ignored him and reached for the radio on his shoulder. Dispatch. I have one male in custody at Liberty Diner. Requesting a supervisor. Static answered, followed by a calm voice confirming the request. Marcus listened closely. The surveillance team would hear the transmission, the false charge, and the strain entering Whitmore's voice. The clock above the kitchen door read 8:38 in the evening. 9 minutes remained before the internal affairs team was scheduled to enter. Whitmore moved toward Helen with his notebook open. You are going to sign a statement confirming that he refused to leave and threatened customers. Helen stared at the blank page. That did not happen. You need to understand what is at stake. I do, she said. That is why I will not sign it. Emily reached beneath the counter and brought a small monitor to life. Several camera angles appeared on the screen. One showed Marcus entering alone. Another showed him paying for his coffee. A third showed Whitmore standing beside the booth. Tyler stepped closer. Pause that frame. Emily stopped the footage at the moment Whitmore's hand moved below the edge of the table. The packet was visible for less than a second, but it was enough. Whitmore looked at the screen, then at Marcus. You planned this. Marcus met his eyes. I planned to observe. You chose everything that happened after. The clock moved to 8:42. 5 minutes remained. Whitmore looked toward the front door, then toward the alley exit, then back at the camera. Tyler removed his body camera and placed it on the counter. This has been recording since we entered, he said. I will provide the full file. Whitmore whispered Tyler's name like a warning. Tyler shook his head. The badge was supposed to make us accountable. Marcus listened as the rain softened outside. For the record, he said, read the charges one more time. Whitmore turned toward him. You do not get to question me. Marcus looked at the clock. The second hand continued forward. I am not questioning you, he said. I am giving you one last chance to tell the truth. Whitmore stood between Marcus and the front door while the clock above the kitchen moved toward 8:43. No one spoke. The silence no longer belonged to fear. It belonged to anticipation. Emily kept the security footage frozen on the frame that showed Whitmore's hand near the booth. Tyler stood beside the counter with his body camera in plain view. Helen remained near the register, no longer looking down. Marcus listened to the rain easing against the windows and counted the seconds without moving his lips. Whitmore tried to recover the authority slipping away from him. Everyone stays where they are until the supervisor arrives, he said. Tyler glanced toward the parking lot. You requested one several minutes ago. Then wait. Marcus turned his head slightly. You are the one who seems impatient. Whitmore faced him. You think this is over because a few people decided to tell stories. Marcus answered quietly. No. I think it is over because the evidence no longer depends on stories. The clock reached 8:44. A faint vibration passed through the device hidden inside Marcus's jacket, then stopped. The first set of files had reached the Internal Affairs Command Center. Audio from the recorder. Footage from the diner. Dispatch traffic. Tyler's body camera would complete the chain. Whitmore looked toward the monitor and then toward Emily. Delete that recording. Emily shook her head. The backup feed uploads automatically to cloud storage. Who can access it? Not you. Helen placed both hands on the counter. And not me. That was the point. Whitmore turned toward Marcus, suspicion finally replacing arrogance. Who are you? Marcus met his eyes. You had 30 minutes to ask the right question. The clock moved to 8:45. Outside, two sets of headlights appeared at opposite ends of the parking lot. Dark vehicles turned in without sirens and stopped beneath the rain-slicked diner sign. The customers near the windows noticed first. The truck driver lowered his phone. Tyler looked through the glass and straightened. Whitmore followed his gaze. Who called them? No one answered. A white coffee cup near the edge of the counter trembled as Helen shifted her hand. It slipped, struck the tiled floor, and rolled beneath the red neon glow, spilling coffee across the floor. The sound pulled every eye back to Marcus. You still have time to stop, officer, he said. Whitmore's expression hardened. You do not get to tell me what to do. Marcus lifted his eyes toward the clock. The second hand crossed 8:46. I am not telling you what to do. I am giving you one last chance to tell the truth. Whitmore reached for Marcus's arm and turned toward the entrance as though he could still carry his version of events outside before anyone else took control. The clock reached 8:47. The device inside Marcus's jacket vibrated once, longer this time. The final confirmation had arrived. Every recorded word, every camera angle, and every image of the envelope and the packet had been secured. Car doors opened outside. Figures in plain clothes crossed the parking lot with badges visible beneath their coats. The bell above the entrance rang as Captain Raymond Cole stepped inside, followed by investigators moving with quiet precision. Whitmore froze. Cole looked first at Marcus, then at the handcuffs around his wrists, then at the sealed packet on the table. Officer Whitmore, he said, step away from Detective Reed. The diner seemed to stop breathing. Whitmore turned slowly toward Marcus. Detective. Cole did not look away from him. Detective Marcus Reed, Internal Affairs. This operation is now under my control. Tyler lowered his head in relief. Helen covered her mouth. Emily closed her eyes for one brief second. Marcus stood exactly where Whitmore had left him, calm and silent, while the truth entered the diner wearing no uniform at all. Captain Raymond Cole raised one hand, and the investigators stopped exactly where they stood. No one touches anything until the scene is documented, he said. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of final authority. Whitmore looked from Cole to Marcus, searching for some explanation that might restore the confidence he had worn only moments earlier. None came. This man refused a lawful order, Whitmore said. He was found with a controlled substance. Cole turned toward the sealed packet on the table. Was it photographed before you moved it? Whitmore did not answer. Was its original location documented? Silence. Did your partner witness the discovery? Tyler stepped forward. No, Captain. I did not see the packet until Officer Whitmore held it up. Cole nodded toward one of the investigators. Record that statement. Preserve Officer Grant's body camera. Secure the diner footage, the dispatch audio, and the cloud backup. Another investigator photographed the booth, the packet, the counter, and the white envelope still visible inside Whitmore's jacket. Only after every angle had been documented did Cole address the handcuffs. Officer Grant, remove them. Tyler approached Marcus with the key. His hands were steady, but his voice carried regret. Detective Reed, I am sorry. The handcuffs opened with a quiet click. Marcus brought his hands forward and looked at Tyler. What matters now is what you do next. Tyler nodded. Across the diner, Helen released a breath she seemed to have held for years. Emily stood beside the monitor, ready to provide every stored recording. The truck driver kept his phone raised until an investigator confirmed that the video would be copied and preserved. Whitmore tried again. This was a setup. Marcus met his eyes. The investigation was planned. Your choices were not. Cole instructed Whitmore to place his badge, service radio, and duty weapon on the counter. There was no shouting, no public humiliation. Each item was photographed, labeled, and sealed according to procedure. Whitmore watched his badge disappear into an evidence bag beneath the same red neon light he had used as a symbol of control. In the weeks that followed, the recordings from Liberty Diner led investigators to payment records, altered reports, and several questionable arrests connected to Whitmore. Helen gave a complete statement about the envelopes she had been forced to prepare. Emily provided archived footage she had quietly saved for nearly 2 years. Tyler testified about what he had witnessed and admitted the times when fear for his career had kept him silent. His honesty did not erase that silence, but it became the beginning of accountability. Months later, Marcus returned to Liberty Diner on a clear morning. Sunlight filled the windows, and the red booths no longer seemed trapped beneath shadows. Helen poured him a cup of black coffee. Emily placed a warm slice of apple pie beside it. Marcus set the worn silver coin near the saucer. This time, it was not a signal. It was only a tip. Helen looked toward the entrance and smiled. "You belong here anytime." Marcus lifted the coffee. Everyone should. Whitmore had tried to decide who belonged in the diner, but in the end, the truth decided who deserved the badge.